The big mistakes that I've made in the past have been because I've tried to go too far too fast. The big mistakes I've made has been in that. And then, of course, quality matters so much, not just to your customer, but to you as a business. If you're making a physical product or even a service, really, quality is everything. If I had to go back and change the way I did, I mean, I love everything I learned from all my failures in the journey. But
Hmm.
if I was going to change anything or give advice to someone else, it would be okay with selling out of your product. Be okay
Okay.
with um, not having the best version of your product at the beginning, but being willing to evolve it slowly over time as you learn what the consumer wants.
Welcome to the Ingleside Reviews Innovators Unveiled. We're thrilled to take you on a monthly journey into the minds behind the most cutting-edge products hitting the market today. From the coolest gadgets lighting up your Instagram feeds to groundbreaking services revolutionizing our daily lives, we're here to spotlight the innovations and, more importantly, the innovators. So gear up for an energetic and informative ride as we delve deep into the stories, the challenges, and the triumphs of the creative geniuses shaping our future. This is Ingleside Reviews Innovators Unveiled. And now your host, A.D. Edwards.
Welcome to another episode of Ingleside Reviews Innovators Unveiled. Today, we're diving into the story of an entrepreneur who turned a simple phone grip into a household brand. Mike Watts, the founder of Love Handle, has faced a crushing loss of nearly $500,000 in a single deal, but only to come back stronger, building one of the most recognized smartphone accessory companies in the world. From licensing products to building his own family-run business, Mike has proven that resilience, creativity, and staying true to your values can turn setbacks into stepping stones. And if you're an aspiring entrepreneur or innovator, this is an episode that you will want to lean into. And while you're here, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and please follow us on your favorite podcast platform so that you'll never miss another story that could change the way you think about business and innovation. Mike, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me here, AD.
So I understand you're a Texas man from the great state of Texas. Is that the case?
Yes, sir. I'm a sixth generation Texan. I got a seventh generation, three kids, and a eighth generation grandson at this point. So yeah, we're
Okay, so
rooted we're
you,
rooted pretty heavy here.
yes, you guys have your roots set down in Texas. I'm new to Texas myself. I've been here for about 7 or 8 years. I'm from the Midwest, so I'm learning some things about Texas, and I'm liking what I'm learning. Like, for example, brisket's a new thing for me. Bucky's is new for me. Hatch chili is new for me, and so are kolache. So I'm loving Texas. So I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, well, welcome. We're glad to have you.
So now you're an entrepreneur. You got a very successful business going, and it wasn't always like that. A lot of people that come on the show, I love the fact that they share the different challenges that they had to overcome. They share some of the struggles that they had to come up against, and a lot of things you can't prepare for, but you still have to be resilient. You have to be able to adapt, and those are the stories that we love. And you have a good story like that. But my question to you is though, have you always been an entrepreneur, or did you ever have a traditional job at one point?
I think God probably put it in me that I was going to have this entrepreneurial path. I got off of it for a little while, and I've had a lot of jobs. I've always had to work hard. We didn't really come from money. So when I was young, my family had to try to make ends meet, and if I wanted any scratch in my pocket, I had to get it on my own. So around 13, I started cutting grass in the neighborhood, and then got my friends involved in that. I got into trading baseball cards. I actually made a little bit of money doing card trade, kind of like stock trading for
Mm-hmm.
teenagers, and ended up
Yes.
working at a baseball card shop, and then on up. I had 13 different jobs before I graduated college, and every one I learned something at. But all along the way, I would have some sort of small side hustle going on. Even in middle school, I was the guy selling candy out of my backpack. So I guess the answer is yes. I've always been an entrepreneur, but even though I did a 7-year stint in the clink, also known as corporate America.
I like that. I like that because it's just the opposite of freedom. But you know
Definitely
what
so.
though, you had the entrepreneurial bug, and you sometimes sometimes the thought of there's nothing wrong with having a job. And sometimes that's something you could count on. And I guess when you made certain moves, that's what you did. But was there a specific moment when you realized you didn't want to work for someone else, but to only create your own path from that point on, and not just do little things on the side, but do that as your main income?
Well, there was, and it was when I was in corporate America and I was, surrounded by these concrete and glass walls in a skyscraper. And I was doing some pretty amazing things, I thought, and innovating internally within my department. And it didn't really matter what I did, I was getting a 3% raise.
Mm-hmm.
People sitting in the cubicle next to me, just kind of coasting along, and they got the same raise I got. And the structure just was not there to incentivize you based on the amount of output and value that you brought to the world. And I found that frustrating. I also, at each one of those jobs along the way, I had some good bosses, but I had a lot of bad bosses that I learned from.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always frustrated by that and having to report to somebody that, didn't treat me with respect, or, just talked down to me, or really didn't respect my time. And so I think it sort of was a buildup in that respect, and that I really just wanted to be able to have it on my own terms. And really, when it came down to it at the end, was just the financial side of it. My wife and I just had our first child in the year 2000, and that set off a chain of events where we went from two incomes to one, and we were forced to try to come up with some extra money because I just wasn't
Right.
getting the increases I needed out of corporate America.
That does it does put a person on a path where they have to make a decision, because if you don't change, nothing's going to change for you. So that's
Yep.
something I could truly appreciate. Now, before we're going to talk about Love Handle, because that's what's happening now. But before Love Handle, you worked on products like how do you pronounce it? Pivotrim? Is that how you say it?
Pivotrim, yes, sir.
The Pivotrim. Okay. Now, what lessons from those ventures shaped your mindset when you came to create Love Handle?
Well, the Pivotrim was so people know it's an aftermarket weed eater head. So if you've ever cut grass with a weed whacker, you know the frustration with winding the trimmer line on, feeding
Mm-hmm.
it out, and it never really works right. And the line breaks right at the most critical moment. And we developed a trimmer head that was very easy to load, and it allowed us to cut with reckless abandon, we used to say. But it was real simple, universal head. You could take off your trimmer, put this one on. And that was actually the product that I launched when I left corporate America. And we actually licensed the original design from an inventor. And I had been on the hunt for something that I could protect. The lesson I had learned at
Mm-hmm.
that point, with all the side hustles my wife and I did over the trade shows on the weekends, every weekend we were at a home and garden show selling some sort of wear, but none of it was protectable. None of it was our product. We were just reselling products, and anything that was good, someone would copy us and just do it again at the same show. And so we really wanted something we could protect. This product had a patent tied to it, and I really thought I could sell it well. And so we on the journey of I didn't know how injection molding was done. I had to figure I didn't even know where plastic came from. And we had to figure all these things out about how to manufacture products in a quality format, something that's going to spin at 14,000 RPMs on the end of a household trimmer. It better be
Mm-hmm.
well made. And so we learned some
Yes.
hard lessons there. We had to learn how to package it, how to market it. Ended up creating an infomercial. And so we were selling our product on TV, at late night, 1-800, call now type thing. And,
Mm-hmm.
we just learned so many lessons and made a lot of mistakes. But, and those lessons that we learned, I think that transferred over to Love Handle were were around communicating value to people visually. We had to
Mm-hmm.
do that on an infomercial, and so that's definitely relevant today, especially in the age of social media. I learned a lot about manufacturing and quality controls and how products are made and how to design products that would be easier to make than more complicated to make, and therefore reduce the upfront costs. I learned about not ordering too much product at one time and
Mm-hmm.
making a big mistake that can cost you a lot of money.
Yeah. So there was a lot of valuable things you learned from that first venture. I got to back up to something you said, though, because I'm just curious. Are you telling me, Mike, that you all would have prototypes at different conventions and events, and then you will go to another one and someone will copy what you had?
Well, no, what I mean is that we would sell, like, for example, we had these yard decorations that we sold under one of my little side hustles, let's call them. While I was
Mm-hmm.
still at corporate America, I spent every weekend, every sick day, holiday, and a few extra days, if we're being honest,
Of
out there
course.
on this side hustle. And so we would show up at a trade show. Let's say we're in Fort Worth, and we would set up our booth and sell all our goods. And there was these little butterflies and dragonflies on a stick. People would buy them 3 for 10, 7 for 20, and create a big hullabaloo around our booth. And people would notice that there'd be a lot of cash flying around and people, a lot of excitement. It was very visual. And every single one of those pieces we sold had a tag hanging off of it that said who the manufacturer was. And
Okay.
so the guy across from me that was sitting there frustrated trying to sell his product, watching me make all that money all day long, well, he would just pick up one of them tags off the floor, call the manufacturer, get an order, and the next show that would be down the street in Dallas, 2 weeks later, he's got the same stuff right in the across from me in the same booth. And it happened with product after product after product where people, I would put the hustle and try to make the booth look great
Mm-hmm.
and put lights out there, some music, and then bring a lot of charisma and seed the audience with product and do some deals and specials and make it fun. And then they would just basically take the results of that and copycat me and then end up in the race to the bottom. And that's the reason I wanted a product that I could protect via a patent, something that would be mine, something that I could control what the price structure would be. And that was the reason it was so attractive to go after a patented product.
So let's get into that. Let's get into the Love Handle origin story. Where did the idea for Love Handle come from, and what problem were you trying to solve?
So when I was first introduced to Love Handle, a lot of people call me an inventor, and I am an inventor in some respects, but I typically take an invention and then make it better. But a friend of mine that was a previous business partner had run across this product that was called the Thing Sling at the time, and it was
The
just a
Thing
piece of
Sling.
elastic. The Thing Sling, yeah, it was just a piece of
Okay.
elastic on an hourglass plastic base with a 3M adhesive on the back. Very simple product. And cell phones had just come out. Everyone, it was all the rage. The iPhone 4 was the latest and greatest. So that was the first glass backed iPhone. And
Yes.
so not only were they expensive, getting much more expensive, but they were also much more fragile. Now you could break the front or the back.
Mm-hmm.
So I had experienced that myself. And he showed me this product and said, this looks like a good idea. So I tried it out over the weekend, and it took me about 2 days to figure out that this was the next big idea. That's exactly what I've been looking for. And I just thought it was a great product. I was like, it's like wheels on a suitcase. It's that thing that should come on it, but doesn't. But
Mm-hmm.
people don't see it yet. And so that Monday, I got on a plane and I flew to meet the inventor, John Murphy. He lived in Minnesota. Had dinner with him and his wife and said, look, I just sold the Pivotrim company for quite a lot of money. I had a warehouse and distribution center sitting there empty in Houston. And I said, look, this is the perfect timing. I already have all this experience. I know how to get products in retail. I had sold in every major retailer in America and a lot of them around the world. I said, I
Connections
think
are
I can do
very
that.
important.
Well,
Connections
they
are
are.
very
Yeah,
important. Yeah.
absolutely. And understanding like how markets work. Certain retailers, you need to go through a distributor to get to that retailer. So you've got a second layer in there, but you need to understand how that structure works, what kind of margins they need, what kind of marketing support they need, what does the packaging need to look like so that people can understand the product, communicate and see the value to them because anytime anybody spends money on a product, on some like core level, they're not spending money on key resources like food for their family. So they need on some level to understand that they're making a good decision because of some value that they are receiving, some benefit. And so it's up to us as marketers and product creators to communicate that. And we used infomercials and really bright packaging and interactive packaging on the Pivotrim. And I brought all those lessons to the Love Handle when we started. So that's where it started. It took me 5 days to get the license for the patents, and then I still work today. Just today, I was working with John Murphy on it. It's been 13 years that we've been working together on this, and the product has evolved to become an entire line of smartphone accessories, including wallets and MagSafe accessories, interchangeable straps, car mounts, bike mounts, stroller mounts, all kinds of products, and then licenses. We have Major League Baseball prints, and we just are about to launch the Hello Kitty designs. So it's really evolved from just a very simple idea to an entire ecosystem around bringing value to the smartphone user, which more and more people now have smartphones than they did 13 years ago. There's actually more phones than humans. So it's a huge market, and it's consumable because people use it over time and they replace them. So it's a dream market, and I feel super blessed to be in it, but it's been an absolute grind to get the company to stay alive. And, I worked for the first 5 years with no income. I just literally had zero income off this business and just had to show up every day. But now my entire family works here. My wife, my kids, my dad is now retired from here, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. It's very much truly a family affair, and I wouldn't trade it for the world because we get this really special time to live the entrepreneurial dream, the American dream together, and really build something that I think is impacting lives.
That's an awesome story. I really want to know a little bit more about what it's like to have your father working for you. That's another episode of a different show. But you know what? I usually ask entrepreneurs, especially those who bring products to market, did they know they had a big idea immediately, or did it take a while for it to be validated by others? But I think you said after 2 days or something, you knew that what you were onto was going to be a great success. Is that what you said?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some standards that I've learned. I didn't just wake up with these one day. It took years of being on the front lines. And when we used to sell products at the home and garden shows, it was $20 a transaction, and I had to stop someone in the aisle, get them over to my booth, show them my product, whatever it was, and convince them to buy it. And you do that with a lot of different products and a lot of different people. Over time, you start to understand where people place value and what type of things that they're looking for in their life. And then you start to see the market and products in a different way. And you start seeing products that are expensive and inexpensive, and ones that are relevant for everyone, and ones that are relevant for small groups of people. And so I've got a list of things that I've evolved over time that might be helpful to your audience. And when I'm evaluating a new product, I basically just try to look at it and say, well, how big is the market? The bigger the better in most cases. And then how big is the problem that you're solving? And do people even know it's a problem, right? You can have something that's a great problem-solving product, but if you have to educate them that they even have a problem, then that makes it harder. Of course, broken smartphone, that's easy. Everybody's probably experienced it at that point. Everyone has the phone, so it kind of checked that box. And then, can it be demonstrated in 15 seconds or less? That's really important. You can have a cure for cancer in a bottle, but it's going to be very hard for you to show someone that you've got that. And, in just 15 seconds or less. So can you demonstrate it? Does it have any sort of liability issues? That can be a big pitfall for product lines. If you're trying to develop the next big car seat for infants, there's a lot of safety testing and product testing and just general exposure that you're going to have that you might want to avoid. There's certain industries that are very, very hard to break into. The beverage space is a good example, mainly because of the distribution network and the shelf space is taken already. How do you break in? You might have the best drink in the world, but how do you get it onto the shelf of a retailer is going to be very difficult to do. So those are the types of things that I look for. Is there a space for it in the marketplace on the shelf? Now, with
Mm-hmm.
online shopping, that's become less critical over time, but still it's important for people to be able to categorize it in a category. You can definitely create a new category, but it needs to typically be adjacent to another category and solve a problem nearby to something that they're used to buying. So those are some of the things I look at, and the higher score I can get on each one of those, the more interested I am in the product.
You know, you described when you started your first venture, and with Love Handle later on, that you would go to trade shows. So you would see people, potential customers, and you would see their reaction, right? And you would have to convince them. My question to you, and someone may be wondering the same thing, with the product that you bring to market, you have to convince the consumer that is useful. Eventually, you have to convince those who gatekeep the retail stores. What's the toughest sale? Because the reason I ask this is because you may see the value. You may see that customers that you've talked to out in the field, in the trenches, doing your trade shows, love it. But now you have to talk to these big conglomerates, and they may not be as apt to take it as a great idea. So how do you handle that? Or is it a difference at all?
Well, it is a difference because each of those category of people are looking for different things. So the consumer is like, how is this going to make my life better, just for me?
Okay.
And so it's up to you in that one-on-one interaction to explain to them that by them sacrificing $10 that they could use to buy lunch with, instead they're going to invest it into a handle on their phone to prevent a $500 repair on their phone. And then our big thing with the Love Handle, we've given away over 1 million samples for free at this point. Every trade show we go to, we go and stocked. We spend most of our marketing budget on sampling because we know that people, once they experience having a phone with a handle and then now a kickstand and magnets and things like that, they're not going to go back. It's like putting wheels on your suitcase and then coming back and say,
Right,
okay, I need
right.
my wheels back. Like, nobody wants to do that. So that's a one-on-one interaction between you and the consumer, right? The buyer for a retailer, they don't really care about that as much. What they care about is it going to hit these certain criteria that I have for my store? Are people going to show up and buy it without me having to do anything? Like, the retailer doesn't want to have to run ads for your product. They don't want it to take up too much space. So they're going to measure it based on the physical presence in the store and what they call turns. How many times can you move through all your inventory in a year? Is it so, like, typically 3 to 5 is what they're looking for. So you would sell the shelf out 3 to 5 times a year. That's going to be probably good enough for them. Does it have the margins that they're looking for? If it's too expensive, if I'm like, here, it's $7.80 and you can sell it for $9.99, well, they're not interested in that. That's not enough profit for them. So,
margin,
they're looking for 50, 55, some retailers 60% margin that they can get on your product when they sell it. And, they're also going to try to see how many of those one-on-one interactions do you have banked up? Can you prove to me that there's more people out there that want this product? I've had buyers that purchased my product for their retail store and didn't really even like my product on a personal level, but they were acute enough buyers to see that most people would, and that most people would see the value in this, that this is an emerging market. They already have a competing product or something in this space, and they were looking for something that's going to fit that space. So the short answer is that it's two different types of people with two different types of criteria in those situations.
Okay. Now, what were some of the earliest obstacles you faced in taking Love Handle from concept to market?
Well, right out of the gates, I had wild success with the Pivotrim, selling it on TV. So the first thing I thought I would do is shoot a TV commercial and start selling my Love Handle on TV. And while we did get some sales on the infomercial, it's enormously expensive to develop a commercial, set up all the logistics, and then get enough inventory in to support the television launch. And so it was about a $275,000 outlay for me to
Mm.
get all those things in place, to shoot the stuff, to get all the imagery, to get the website set up and the call centers and everything. And it was an absolute flop, mainly
Mm.
because the price point was too low. And it was a little
Really?
early. It was before people put anything on their phones. That was the first challenge I had, was people, their objections over time have changed, their challenges. Now they're like, well, this is going to interfere with my wireless charger, right? So now we have
Right.
MagSafe products. But back then, that wasn't even a thing. So back then, it was like, why would I stick something on my phone? Nobody does that. So it was a different set of challenges. Plus, the price point was only about $10. So if you spend all the time and effort to get a sale and you only get $10 off a TV campaign, it's not going to be profitable. And then
Mm-hmm.
finally, the inventory, I purchased it. I made it all in China in a huge batch. I was really full of ego, honestly, and I, had just sold a company for millions of dollars, and I was like, well, I'm just going to order $500,000 worth of product and just get it stocked up heavy. And I brought it all in, and we started selling it. We realized pretty quickly that the Chinese had cut some corners on the
Oh,
glue
wow.
that's used to connect the elastic to the base,
Uh-huh.
and it started coming off and breaking and degrading over a matter of just months. And of course, I couldn't sell a product that people were going to drop their phone. That's the whole thing, the whole proposition here. And so we tried to figure out how we could repair this. It was unrepairable. So I took a $500,000 hit, taking all that inventory, loading it into a box truck, driving it to the dump, and pushing it into the dump early on. So coming out of the
And
gates,
that's
we weren't really sprinting down the line very, very fast.
right. Well, that's what I mentioned in the introduction, but you were able to bounce back. And a lot of times when it's human nature, you get downtrodden. You feel terrible when stuff goes wrong, and a lot of things are mental, but you were able to keep going. So that's the next thing I want to talk about is resilience and setbacks. Now, you lost hundreds of thousands on a supplier deal early on. What kept you from walking away at that point? Because you already sold a company previously. I mean, you could have just did real estate or something, but what was that in your head to say, I'm going to still go with this love handle idea?
I guess I'm a glutton for punishment in some respects. It, I enjoyed the ride, I think, in all
Okay.
honesty. And when my dad and I started this company, he was involved in Pivotrim too. And that was our theme going into this company, is that we knew it was going to be hard, and we knew that, we were going to have doors slammed in our face, but we also knew that God had our back 100%. And that what we needed to do is just, not worry about what happens or doesn't happen, and just enjoy the ride. And so that really helped us out. And I truly believed that this product was needed by the market. Like, I believed that then, and I believe that just as much, if not more today, that phones were incomplete, that they needed this additional feature so that they integrated more seamlessly into our lives as humans and the way our hands work, and giving it a home in the car, and being able to prop it up on a desk, or not, or to put my company logo on it. There was a million use cases where I knew that this could work. I just had to find the winning combination. And over time, we up until the year 2020, we finally broke through, and we actually found most of our success in the promotional product space, where we were putting company logos on these. I learned my lesson about China. I reshored manufacturing, and we literally got in and built the machines to make our product in the building. And still today, I've got a machine up there that's built over 15 million parts, and it's completely changed the way we did our company, and it grew like how many people we needed, but it also created employment opportunities. It allowed me to really focus on quality. And then in 2020, when COVID happened and people stopped doing trade shows, that business went out the window. We had to reinvent ourselves once again And at that point, I created the Pro ecosystem, which is the new version, which has a kickstand. It has internal
Mm-hmm.
magnets, so you can stick your phone to like the workout equipment or in your car mount magnetically. And I
I
spent
use it
that
for the
time innovating.
I use it for the car mount for the GPS. I use the kickstand when I'm watching my movies on the phone. So it's very useful. That's when the scaling and stuff happened. But I want to back it up a little bit, Mike. I want to talk a little bit more about this setback. Now, other people are watching when you have this setback. And I need the listeners and the viewers to understand this. Those who are trying to bring something to market, they always have the naysayers in the background. Were you, as an entrepreneur, concerned about what other people thought when they saw that you had these cases that were coming off the glue? To others, they would look at it as a failure. What was the mindset you have to have when dealing with outside influences, commenting on your success or failure?
Well, it's very valid, and you're always going to have people. And when you're on the way up, I don't care if it's in business and manufacturing, or you're just becoming a better person. People are going to try to bring you back down because your relative growth to them, you're taking your shot down the field. It means that they're not. And so really
Mm-hmm.
it's about them. Anything they say negative about what you're doing is about them and not you. And so first I surround myself with people that didn't have that as their neutral position. The people in my
Yes.
circle were uplifting. They
Mm-hmm.
they saw obstacles as just part of the journey, and we just try to stay focused on and really tight like that. We were a family business, so it made that a lot easier to do. And I think it was probably harder in the Pivotrim company because at least at this point I was like, well, yeah, this guy took a company and built it and sold it for a lot. Like, I'm not really going to say he can't do it because he just did it. But the
Right.
other one, I left the security of a great job with great
Mm-hmm.
income, a pension, a 401k, security from my wife and 3 kids. And I left all that behind to take this unknown risk and my grandmother thought it was a terrible idea. She ended up, her and my grandfather invested in it later and ended up making a ton of money off of that
Yeah.
investment. But she said, why would you ever leave? I worked for the electric company. Like, why would you leave such a secure job? You're never going to get fired from that job. You're always going to have money for your family. She couldn't understand why I would,
Right.
leave that security behind. But for me, it was like nails on a chalkboard all day long. I felt like I was compromising my entire life and I just wasn't happy. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, not taking the risk was going to be more painful than actually taking it and seeing how it worked out.
So you laid out some great principles that can be helpful to aspiring entrepreneurs and those who are in the business now. When you look at that situation that you dealt with and you look back, what would you have done differently? I ask this because I had a gentleman on that was he's the president of the American Inventors Association, and he talked about actually knowing who you're dealing with overseas versus a situation when you don't. Now, do you think that was an impact that impacted how things played out, or what would you do differently in that situation? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think that the big lesson is to take affordable steps. The big mistakes that I've made in the past have been because I've tried to go too far too fast. And
Okay.
then if you make an error in judgment and you try to throw the ball too far down the field, it's going to cost a lot more to do it. And so the big mistakes I've made has been in that. And then of course, quality matters so much, not just to your customer, but to you as a business. If you're making a physical product or even a service, really quality is everything. So it's what you envision. You're putting your name stamp on this. So if I had to go back and change the way I did, I mean, I love everything I learned from all my failures in the journey. But if I was going to change anything or give advice to someone else, it would be okay with selling out of your product. Be okay with not having the best version of your product at the beginning, but being willing to evolve it slowly over time as you learn what the consumer wants. And just
When
know
you
that it's
say
never done.
when you say be okay with selling out of your product, what do you mean by that, Mike?
What I mean is I was always worried that I wouldn't have enough inventory, that I was going to go out and create this enormous demand, and then I was going to have more demand out there than I would have supply for. And so I would over order supply to the point that it would stretch my capital so thin. And then I realized at some point later, hey, there's a mistake on the packaging. Something as simple as that would be all of a sudden now I have to rework all this inventory and I've got all this extra expense and it's actually going to take longer than if I had just taken a small order. Yeah, and the Chinese get you, and when you do manufacturing in China or overseas at all, it'll be like, oh, here's a widget and it's $5 if you buy 100 of them. It's $4 if you buy 500, but it's only $1 a piece if you'll buy 10,000 of them. Buy the $5 one. Just start small. Prove to yourself that that version of the product in its current form is what the market wants. So just avoid focusing on profit early and try to prove the model. And then once you have the model and you consistently outpace the demand with the supply of the product in its current form, then you scale up and you start being profitable because of your efficiency of scale. But if you try to do too much too fast, a lot of it, we don't fully understand what the customer wants. I didn't think that people wanted a kickstand on their phone. I didn't think that they wanted magnetic attachment to their phone. I really didn't, and I was wrong about that. But because I was going slow about it, that really helped out. Early on, I went too fast, and it really bit me.
Yeah, I guess when you think about it, because when you were giving out product for people to try it out, Miss Fields, she gave out free cookies for people to taste. So you take a little bit of the inventory from the manufacturer because you're really testing them out too. You kind of see what their product is like. But if you get a whole bunch, now you're stuck with it. Yeah, I see that. Here's one last question, and I'm going to move on to something else, but about the setbacks. How do you personally handle moments of doubt when everything seems stacked up against you?
Well, I'm not going to say it's easy, AD. It's hard, and I definitely have those. More recently, I've just got the weight of my entire family, including my son, my daughter-in-law, my wife, and my dad has a lot of money invested in here. All of that weight of their expectation and their income and their livelihood, it depends on me making good decisions. And so there are definitely days that I feel like I'm inadequate or like I'm not making the right choices, or there's just so much riding on everything that I'm doing. But honestly, I just pray about it and I just keep doing what I can do in front of me. That's all I can do, and try to make the best decision I can. The worst decision you can make is indecision. The best thing you can do is just make a decision and move forward in confidence, be positively persevering for innovation and trying to do better and make good choices. But, you're going to make mistakes. We're, like we said, we're from Texas, right? It's like a rodeo. You're going to get thrown off the bull some. You're not going to make it 8 seconds the first time. Right. And just knowing that in advance, I think really helps. Early on, a lot of people think I'm going to start a business. It's going to go this way. It's definitely not going to go the way you think. And it's probably going to be a lot harder and a lot bumpier, and you're going to get thrown off the bull a whole lot more than you think you will. But I can, as a word of encouragement, I can tell people that if you're cut out for it, it's absolutely the best path. If you got what it takes and God's put that in you to be an entrepreneur, then I highly encourage you to just persevere, take your licks, get back up, and keep going, because it's worth it in the end.
So let's talk about scaling and growth. What was the turning point when you knew that Love Handle was going to succeed?
I think that it was probably the first big order that we got from was Samsung at the time. They ordered, and we were pretty early on. They ordered $280,000 worth of product from us. We had never even quoted anything that big. And at that point, we didn't have our automation in place, and we committed to. But just the fact that they were going to give these out as promotional products with every one of the phones that they sold for that season.
Really?
And it was such a huge and exciting thing. And I guess it wasn't even that order, but it's like we went to great lengths to pull that order together. So much so that I've got pictures of me and my kids, and they were small at the time, up here with bottles of super glue and clothespins for all hours of the night, putting these things together. We didn't have our automation. I couldn't make it in China because I didn't trust that it would come out good. And so we were creating these little kits and mailing them to family members in Virginia and Minnesota, all over the place, and with a little instruction video on how to build these things and bring them all back here and package it all up. And we got that order out. And it wasn't 3 weeks later that they loved it so much they came back and reordered more. I feel like at that point, it's really not, you can sell one time to anybody, but when they come back and reorder, that's when you really know. So at that point, I'm like, yeah, I was really proud of us for doing that, but that's when I really knew that it was going to make it.
So how do you balance growth while keeping the company family owned and value driven?
Well, it's an ongoing thing. I've gotten a lot better at it. And a lot of that comes down to building a culture and a team that is centered in the right set of values. So for us, we're very service minded. When we bring someone onto our team, we're not necessarily looking for the skills that they have or the experience that they have. It's like, are they like us? Do they have the servant attitude? Are they willing to show up and do whatever it takes? Or do they care enough about everyone else's time that they're willing to show up on time? Will they go above and beyond for customers or one another when no one's looking? Those are the types of things that are character. And if you can surround yourself with people of character that are also, like we talked about earlier, they're not naysayers, they're just like can-do attitude. Everyone in here has done almost every other job. We have 27 employees. Everyone's done some sort of job in the building, across, not outside their regular job. And we've got manufacturing and marketing and admin, sales, we've got fulfillment. And you got me, I'm known as the janitor here because, the toilets stop up, I'm the guy to go fix it.
There you go.
And that's the attitude that we have. So to me, that's been the most important way to keep that balance, because otherwise, if I have to be here 7 days a week or even 5 days a week for 20 years straight, it's just too much. And I do a lot of trade shows, I travel, and when I'm not here, I have no doubt whatsoever that the company's running at least as good as it will when I am here. And, that we're going to keep moving forward. My customers will continue to be served, that everybody's going to get along and treat each other with respect. And that's really what it comes down to. That's the only way to get that balance. Because if it's all on you to be sort of directing traffic every single day, then it's going to wear you out and you won't be able to make it long term.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you know how it goes in life. When you come up with an idea, some people encourage you, but you have some people who may snicker and ridicule. And then when it starts to work, they say, oh, I remember Mike back when. This is the question. Sometimes people have the objective when they start companies to sell. You had an opportunity with outside investment, but you decided not to go that route. Can you explain what made that decision for you?
Well, I knew that I wanted to be able to create a company and an environment on my terms. And in my previous company, we had, even though they were family members that we brought in as investors, it completely changed the dynamic in the way you run a company when you have other people that have every right to just walk in the door and ask you the really hard questions and tell you to do it the way that they think you ought to do it. and they have a voice that you have to respect. And I just felt like I wanted to be able to build this company in a way that is honoring to our beliefs and the way that we would be proud of. And also, I think it's not really, I don't think it's healthy to start a company thinking that I'm going to build this company to sell it. You're not building the right kind of company, in my opinion, if you're doing that. You know, did you know that like most companies historically have been passed down generation to generation? The oldest company in the world currently operating today has been around for 1,400 years. It's a Japanese contracting company for those construction, generation to generation to generation. It's very hard to create a generational company that has outside investors because it's hard to get rid of them once they're in. So either it's binary. Either you're a wholly owned company or you have investors. Even if it's 1%, you still have someone else that has a seat at the table. So this way I can transition this company to my children, to eventually maybe to my grandchildren. And I don't know if that's the path we'll take. You can always push the, escape button and we could cash in today if we wanted to. And it just makes us that more attractive, that we're a self-sustained, that someone else, they could come in and be the driver of a fully owned company. So I think too many people today, I see it a lot one of my competitors, I ran into him at a trade show and he knows my story. I've been around longer than him. In fact, he'll tell you I inspired him to start his company, which I think is great, honestly. But first thing he asked me, he's like, Mike, do you still own all your company? I said, yes, sir, I do. He goes, man, I sure wish I did. Like most of the challenges and struggles that I have is with my investors, not with my company or my customers.
Wow. That says a lot. What role has U.S. based manufacturing played in your brand's success and credibility, Mike?
Well, it's definitely helped in a lot of ways. I think, especially more recently, there's been a growth in people's sort of national pride in making or buying American-made products. Right. Historically, though, that wasn't the case. It was a nice to have, but if it was half the price and made in China, people buy it. And that's still probably mostly predominant. What it's been for us is it's allowed us to control the quality, like we talked about. And it's also allowed me to create business models that are kind of based on the book Blue Ocean Strategy, if you've ever read that book. And what it means is that we can make products, let's say in the promotional products industry, you can say, hey, I have a trade show next Saturday. I need 50 pieces of a great promotional product giveaway with my logo on it. Can you do that? And I would say, absolutely. In fact, I can do it in 2 days. So it could be this weekend and I can still get it to you. That's a proposition that China can't compete with. They can't do fewer, faster, finer, high quality, fast, and small quantity. Like they're just not set up for that. So it has given me this ability to have sort of this lack of competition because no one else really has that proposition. It also helps me keep my inventory levels low because I'm baking the cookies as I go. I have over 350 different designs of our product. And when a major retailer orders my product, they're not made. We make them. I put the pieces together. We do this packaging. We do it all in-house. We label it the way they want it to be labeled. And I don't have a bunch of inventory taking up warehouse space. I run this whole manufacturing fulfillment center out of a 10,000 square foot warehouse in South Houston, Texas. Like that's a small space for the amount of volume that we do, the amount of people we have. Yeah. So parking is a problem, but outside of that, because of these efficiencies that we've created and really, again, that positive attitude of trying to figure out how to make the machines to make our products. Like we have machines that assist us that we design and build, one of a kind machines that do the assembly. We figured out like what are the process, what's got to happen, got the circuitry, got the actuators, and I've learned about Arduino circuits and programming, and, you know, all these things that we had to figure out how to assemble these products and do it in a very consistent way to where two people with a machine assist can make the same amount of product that 10 people it would take to make in hand assembly, or maybe 20. So that has helped us as well. So I think American manufacturing is it's a nice to feel, and it's definitely helped, you know, in creating an environment where my team members, like the guy that runs the whole operation here, Tim, he started at the bottom. He was just an assistant in the working on the assembly line, and worked his way up to now he's head of all the production and fulfillment here. And so people see that and they say, man, this is a company that I can stick with, and if I do above and beyond, then I can move up. And I really enjoy that, you know, having that, creating that environment. So for all those reasons, you know, I'm so happy that we make it here. Of course, now with tariffs, we look like geniuses, right? Because everyone else is getting hammered with a 30 or 100% tariff, and they don't, or not unsure, like what's the tariff can be tomorrow. But for us, and I, you know, of course, I'm a fan of, you know, investing in really keeping American manufacturing here, because I think that's what makes our country great. But really, I don't do it for those reasons. I do it because I think it serves my customer the best, and it serves my employees the best.
Well, you certainly look like you were able to see the future, that's for sure. Can you give us the name of that book again? Blue Ocean Strategy, is that the name of it?
Yeah, it's an excellent book, and it's really just the idea that if you build a business model that, so the red ocean is the place where all the sharks are feeding and fighting, right? So if I just came up with a widget and I want to take a product and go put it on eBay, but it's something that's widely available, you know, to bring in from Alibaba, and I end up in a price war. That's kind of where I was at before with those companies I was telling you, like just everybody's got the same stuff, and it's there's really no differentiating factor. But if you can create a business model that makes you unique, and you do it the right way, then you can create a proposition that has essentially no competition, and you can set your own terms.
Yeah, I have a friend that had a business, and he was dealing with one largely immensely popular online retailer, and they would just, every time he would drop his price, they would just drop their price about 99 cents less, and it was very frustrating for him, because he was in the red ocean. Now I understand. But I'm going to put the a link to that book in the show notes on YouTube, so others could check that book out. Let's talk about marketing and branding, Mike. Now, you tried to get on Shark Tank and didn't, but you still got a chance to work with Daymond John. Tell us a little bit, what was that partnership like, and how did that come about?
Well, it's a great story, and again, I think it's sort of symbolic of this whole journey, in that, you know, my dream was to be on Shark Tank. When the Shark Tank came out, any entrepreneurs, if you guys are listening, you know, like when that show came out, it was a dream come true. I loved watching it. Me and my family would sit down and watch it together. We would listen to the pitch and pause it, and then talk amongst ourselves about, are they going to get a deal, or what are they? Is, you know, Mr. Wonderful going to tell them to go behind the barn and shoot them or squash them like the cockroach they are, or talk to me when you have revenue? And so we just love the show. And so we auditioned for it back-to-back years. The first year, we got through the first round of auditions, and they made it to the second round. And in the second round of auditions, they called us back about a week later and said, hey, you didn't make the cut. Sorry, you could try again next year. And so we did it the same thing next year. We auditioned, made it to the second round, got the same result, even though our sales were much higher. I figured it was sales related. But at the end of the day, you know, God had a different plan for us, which was so much better, because what happened is about a year later after that, now they told me, don't send samples to the set. What do you think I did, AD?
You sent samples to the set, of course.
I sent samples to the set. What are they going to do? Arrest me for sending samples?
Exactly.
So I kept sending samples to the dressing room of Daymond John, dressing room of Mark Cuban, dressing room of Robert Herjavec, you know, and to Sony Picture Studios in LA. And eventually Daymond got some of those, stuck it on his phone, was like, this thing's great. I love it. And so he just started ordering them for people in his office. So I got an
Really?
order on my website from the Shark Group, which is the name of his consulting company in New York City. And I saw it and I was like, oh, wow, that's Daymond John's company. He's ordering my product. That is so cool. And
Right.
so there's a phone number on the order. So I just called and was like, hey, I see you guys are ordering. I'm a big fan of the show and such a big fan of Daymond. And can I talk to
Mm-hmm.
him? And they're like, oh, you want to talk to Daymond? I was like, yeah. And they're like, absolutely not. You can't talk to him. You're crazy. So, but what I did do is I built a relationship with the girl that was on the phone, Simone. She's amazing. I still work with her today. But I started making friends with everyone in their office. I kept sending samples, and then I started creating custom ones for his book releases. Some more great
Okay.
books: The Power of Broke, Rise and
Yes.
Grind. These are great titles. And he was out doing book tours, and so I would send him free promotional products for him to give away at his book signing.
Okay.
And I did that for months after months after months, and eventually he called me and he said, "Hey,
Wow.
Mike. Man, I really respect your hustle. I think that hustle is awesome. I also love your product. And, man, I got more deals than I can say grace over, but I like you and I like your product. So I think we ought to make a deal."
Right.
So we ended up making what ended up being a non-equity deal, just like a strategic partnership so that I
Mm-hmm.
could, keep the family ownership here. Now, again, if I'd have gone to Shark Tank, would I be telling you about how great it is to own all my company today? No, I wouldn't, because
No.
I wouldn't own it all. So this was just a much better
Right.
way to do it. Plus he called me. So it's like, we're friends now, like legitimate friends. And like he comes to Houston, we go fishing together. He's been a mentor to me, and I think in some ways I've
Mm-hmm.
been a mentor to him too, ironically so.
Right.
And so it's just been a really win-win relationship. And that's been going on for, 8 years we've been working together. So, you just never know. You got this idea of like how things are supposed to work out.
Right.
But it may work out, but there may just a much better way to do it. But you just got to keep
Mm-hmm.
trying to grind it and hustle it and work towards your vision and try to add value to others.
Yeah, that's an awesome story, and that you know what, Mike, you've been hustling since you were a kid, so that's why you were so good at it, man. This is second nature to you.
I'm
Good
not scared of
job.
work.
Good job. Exactly. Now, what's your approach to marketing Love Handle in such a crowded accessory space? There's so many accessories out there for phones. Huh? How do you approach it? How do you get from the red ocean to the blue ocean?
Well, I think it's different today than early on. Certainly, sampling was a big part of our strategies and trade shows. I've personally attended over 500 trade shows over the span of my marketing career and business career. But these days, it's a lot of, well, you just have to understand the different ways that your customer is going to get your product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for the brick and mortar channel for retailers, we have a strategy that involves us partnering with representative agencies that have showrooms in the major markets. So there's the biggest ones in Atlanta, the second biggest ones in Dallas, and then there's another one in Las Vegas. We have permanent showrooms there, and twice a year we go there, and there's markets or the buyers come in, we write orders, and that's how that industry works. And then for direct to consumer, you have to be on Amazon. If you're
Mm-hmm.
selling on Amazon, then you need to be the seller on Amazon. Don't ever sell and allow, and that's what happened to your friend that you were talking about. He let Amazon sell his product, or he let someone
Yes.
else sell his product on Amazon. If you ever do that, you're never going to get it back. So when you
Right.
launch, make sure you're the seller and you control the pricing. That's so important. And it'll affect the side as well for the brick and mortar, because if you can't control that pricing online, then they don't want to have it in their store. So that's critical.
Right.
I would say Amazon's even more of a defensive measure to have, to make sure that your brand is shown well there and that it's not a lot of price wars going on. It's just you selling it. And then the cream of the crop is the direct to consumer. So where I'm selling it to people on my own website. So these people are literally buying it from the factory. I
Mm-hmm.
have their email address. I have their phone number. I know who they are. and they are the most important customer to me because I can engage with them. So I'm always, so we have a whole team that my wife actually runs our marketing division. So she's got email campaigns. She's doing video shoots once a week, product photography. We partner with influencers. We have SMS, so text messaging campaigns. We have loyalty programs. But all this stuff has evolved over time. 5 years ago, I didn't even have an email list I was selling products, but I didn't email anybody. And so I had to learn about all these things over time. Just like the injection molding early on with the Pivotrim, I had to learn about how this is done. The cool thing is now we have AI. We were really early in adopting AI and just bringing it into the company. I'm a big early adopting guy. And so we've integrated that into how we do everything. And it just gives you like, hey, I'm not sure how to set up my products on Google Shopping. You can go to AI and it will teach you how to do it. It'll tell you step by step what software you need. Optimize my keywords. Here, come up with a creative marketing strategy for us as we launch the Hello Kitty line. And what product should we release first? And like, it's so useful. We didn't always have that, but we do, and we use it now. So whatever tools you've got, look at what other people are doing. Try to just continue to benchmark other people. So I know it's a really big fat answer to the question, but there's different ways that people get products. Some get it in the store, some get it, on Amazon, and some are going to get it direct on our own website. But, it's kind of a different strategy for each one.
So how important, Mike, do you think it is that storytelling play a part in consumer trust of your brand?
It's very important. And I think that we're still learning how to be good storytellers, if I'm being honest, AD. Like I tend to just go back to the look at what it does, right? Look at it. You can stand it up. You can stick it to something metal. You can change the strap. But really, the storytelling piece should be more along the lines of you're busy and we know it and we care about you. So we created this product so that you want to get back to your life and pick up your grandson and give him a hug, prop your phone up right there, get it hands-free, stick it to the fridge so you can get a selfie with him. We want to make these special moments in your life possible, right? And so we're learning how to tell these stories that are from the customer's perspective. People always hear storytelling and they think that it's like, hey, here's a story about me starting my company. And that's not important. That's not interesting to people. They don't care about your company. They care about themselves. And that's fine because what you need to do is find a way to be the guide, right? You're Yoda. They're the hero. Let them be the hero in the story. And you're just the guide to help make their journey to greatness better. And you're just going to give them some tools and some tips along the way, and you let them see their story become better. This is how you become a better person and impact the world and leave a legacy and capture those moments like you wouldn't be able to and prevent loss. Like you're not going to lose your phone and break your phone or be without it on that really amazing vacation or when you're on the roller coaster because we care about you. So here's a tool for you to use on your amazing, journey. Like, that's the type of thing that you need to place your product into people's lives in a way that it benefits them and the journey that they're on to become a better person.
Yeah, because when you look at it that way, it makes it a valuable tool for them. So it's valuable, so they want it. And they, like you say, they would keep ordering it and keep different kinds and different things of that nature.
Yep.
What is the most creative marketing move you've made that surprised you, even with the results?
I think that probably I used to go to these trade shows, and to this day, I don't know anyone else that's ever done this before. But I would be going to a normal trade show for Love Handle, let's say at Ace Hardware, right? So go to the Ace Hardware show, and we're at our booth, and we're selling to Ace Hardware stores that are coming by and buying our product. But what I would do is I would actually look at the map of the show ahead of time, and I would look at all the big brands that were going to be there. So DeWalt, Craftsman, Traeger, Weber, like all these big companies that I knew were going to be there. And I would print custom love handle foam grips with their logo on it and bring them with me, drop them off at their booth the first day and say, hey, if you guys want to have a really cool giveaway item, I made these for you. And they would lose their mind because I had taken the time and effort to go ahead and take the initiative to put their logo on it in advance. And that just meant the world to them. They were immediately, if their marketing manager wasn't there, they were texting me their contact information. They were calling them saying, man, this guy is an awesome thing. He made them with our logo on. I can't wait to show you this. And that generated a ton of business for us and really kept us going, up through the late, through 2020. And that little extra hustle, like we still got our orders from the booth, and that's what everybody else was doing. They were there working their booth or whatever, but we took that extra step to take a full advantage of that time that we were going to be there. And I think that was a really savvy move.
That was brilliant. That was more than savvy. That was brilliant. Let's talk a little bit about leadership and team. Now, you employ a team in the Houston area. How do you build a culture of innovation and ownership?
Well, it's not something that happens overnight. And then, you have to figure out who you are and show people that you truly care about them. My day starts when I get here is I'm going to go around and visit with every single person in the building before I go to my desk. No matter what's going on.
Every single person.
Every single person. I'm going to go have a quick chat, not too long because I got to get to work, but and over time you learn about, what their kids are playing baseball. How's the baseball team doing? Right. Hey, I just went on a trip on vacation camping. How was that trip? And you'd be amazed that if you show interest in other people, they will go to the moon for you. And I don't do it so they'll go to the moon for me. I do it because I want them to have value, purpose, meaning, and joy while they're here. And because they're spending a lot of their day here. And I also need to be able to trust that they're going to make decisions that are good for the company when I'm not around. And that to me has been the most important thing, is to be a servant leader, to be someone who truly cares about others, and it's contagious. And next thing you know, we don't have drama. We're not having a bunch of issues with people not showing up because, they're just tired of being here, and people stay. They don't leave. And it's just so much healthier for us and easier to operate. But it takes, as the leader, you have to set that example. And I have not been perfect about it, but I have learned over time, and I've really enjoyed the process of becoming a better leader in that respect. And so that's really what it comes down to, is just, treating people the way you would want to be treated, not as a lesser. And when we hire people, we make sure to bring them on and explain to them about who we are as a company, who we expect them to be while they're here. And it's, most people that are here will tell you that it's the best job they've ever had, and that they tell all their friends about this place, and they never want to leave. So pulling that off has been amazing.
That's beautiful.
So I'll have to say thank you for joining us on Ingleside Reviews, Innovators Unveiled. I know our listeners are walking away with a valuable lesson about courage, strategy, and purpose-driven entrepreneurship. Thank you so much. Now, to our audience, if this conversation inspired you, make sure to follow our show wherever you are listening, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well for more interviews with game-changing founders and innovators. You can learn more about Anna Cobb at Rejuvenation by checking out the links in our show notes. And as always, keep innovating, keep creating, and never stop unveiling the innovator in you. Until next time, I'm your host, A.D. Edwards, signing off.
You've been listening to Ingleside Reviews, Innovators Unveiled. Our passion is to take you on a journey into the minds behind the most cutting-edge products hitting the market today. It's an honor to have on the show the creative geniuses shaping our future. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. hit our website at inglesidereviews.com. On Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Ingleside Reviews. And on Twitter at Ingleside Review. See you next time.